Welcome to New Ways, New Habits podcast, hosted by change behaviour experts T3 and Kidian Partners.
And if you don't know who we are, we offer leadership and behavioural change products and services to multinational companies, large public sector organisations and SMEs within the UK and globally. I'm Paul Tizard.
And I'm Eleanor Boniface, and we'll be your host for the upcoming podcast, where we will bring voices of these experts to you directly to give you insightful and innovative updates on all aspects of the world of people and organisational development. So in this episode, we'll be looking at organisational purpose and their impact in the workplace. So Anthony, welcome back. It's so lovely to have you again with another very interesting topic, if you'd like to share with us.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, good stuff. So, as I mentioned last time, I've been working around culture and engagement now for around about 10 years, and it's interesting. One of the conversations that I've seen really evolve over that period of time, and certainly since COVID, as many things have done, is this conversation around purpose, both personal and organisational purpose. Around about 10 years ago, there was a great book by Salim Asmail called Exponential Organisations, and he eschewed the kind of power of having a massive transformational purpose, a purpose that showed as an organisation what you were doing to change the world. Very well intended, and lots of companies did it very well. But what tended to happen is we saw a lot of organisations jump on the bandwagon and have what essentially became no more than cinema taglines underneath their email headers. So I think it's interesting to see how that conversation has evolved, particularly as we move into this post-purpose world. I'm doing the inverted commas with my
I saw
fingers.
the inverted commas. We'll let it go. We all know that successful organisations have a strong purpose, or at least they should. This drives their strategy, decision making, and everything else. But you said a word there which I'm really curious about, and you said post-purpose. So does that mean that organisational purpose is obsolete?
No, not in the slightest. But it does mean that organisations need to be more mindful, choiceful, and genuinely believe in it. I mean, one of the things is that, so from a culture and engagement point of view, we know that individual purpose is a vital personal motivator, intrinsic motivator. Think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and Dan Pink's still excellent book, Drive, where he talks about purpose, mastery, and autonomy. So organizational purpose is vital for organizations in terms of defining their USP in the world, defining how they're going to move, what they're going to contribute, but also it should be driving their decision making, as they might need to course correct depending on what's happening in the world. It's also vital because a really good organizational purpose should provide people with meaningful work within the workplace, and that's where some of this tension has sort of arrived. This misalignment has kind of arisen over the last 5 years. Post-purpose is a phrase I heard coined by the Future Laboratory this year, who are a trends advisory firm. And it looks really at consumers and marketing. And what they were looking at is that there's a growing cynicism towards organizational purpose that has sort of arisen over the last sort of 4 or 5 years, and has been exacerbated, like many things, during COVID. It's not that people don't believe in purpose anymore or don't have it. In fact, it's actually totally the opposite. That most consumers nowadays are making a lot of their buying decisions or brands they want to be aligned for based on how it aligns with their own values and their own purpose. And actually, as we'll explore through the conversation, people are becoming much more aware of their own individual purpose. So we're going to talk about two slightly different things and how they come together. So organizational purpose, so in terms of doing something that contributes to the greater good, either as a direct result of what you produce, what you do as an organization, or through your ESG and CSR policy, and ability to provide meaningful and purposeful work. And then secondly, personal purpose, which is, it's a Monday morning when we're recording this. These are the bigger existential questions. Why am I here? What the hell am I doing? Why am I doing it?
Yeah, 100% agree with that. So, Anthony, you mentioned a cynicism towards organisational purpose. So where has that come from?
Yeah, so a little bit to what I alluded earlier on in the introduction. There was a kind of rush for every organisation to have this big purpose, and when that's truly lived and believed, it's fantastic. But there are a number of things that have played into this cynicism. So, and these are broader societal things. So we talk about post-truth politics, whether that be Trump, what's happening in America, post-truth media, all those kind of things. What's happened with our own government within the UK. It's also tied to perceptions and realities of corporate behaviour during COVID and the distribution of wealth crisis. I refuse to call it cost of living crisis. But also, we're starting to see culture and purpose become news items, right, that are being reported more widely. So I think of Brewdog, I think of what happened at the CBI. Those things that, we know culture is important now and purpose is important. We're starting to see it talked about beyond just kind of HR and kind of internal sectors. A big one for me is purpose washing. I think this is possibly the most important. So this is where organizations have grand kind of ESG, sustainability, diversity statements, but they're not living up to themselves. It's largely hollow. They're marking their own homework, if I take a phrase from the COVID inquiry at the moment. And a couple of examples of this without naming names of organizations, but I worked for a large clothing retailer, and they have a mark on their clothing which is their sustainable clothing. So they charge an extra $5 or $10 for this. Actually, when I saw the figures of what was required for that clothing to be marked as sustainable or recycled, the makeup of it was so low that it was shocking. Basically, someone basically just had to walk past the office in a recycled or vintage piece of clothing for it to be classed as sustainable. And I'm being slightly flippant there, but there's a reality of that they're creating these titles, which now people are starting to look more deeply into.
Oh, I've never heard the term purpose washing, so I really enjoyed hearing about that. But do you think there is an element of organisations doing this as a checkbox activity, and that's partly it because sustainability is a widely talked about topic?
I think so. And it needs to move beyond that, because the reality is, even if we take aside the kind of moral and necessity for us to focus on sustainability and climate, for example, is that there's money in their hills, right? That consumers are making decisions about where they buy from based on an organization's not just what they're saying, but actually how they're contributing to sustainability,
Mm.
ecology, diversity, all those variety of different things. And I think because there is an interest in that, I think more widely the media is reporting on that, and actually companies are being caught out from that in a way that perhaps hasn't always been quite so visible. And then the other part of that is when we talk about purpose is having a stated purpose that you learn about in induction or it sits on company stationery that isn't actually really lived once you get within an organization. And similar to we were talking about that transparency and accountability, that's where people want to work for somewhere that they feel has a purpose, and they will be called out on it, and organizations will be called out. And if they're not, that's where things like Glassdoor come in, because people are actually able to talk about that in a fairly meaningful way. And that gap between organizations understanding that purpose is important but actually doing something with it is pretty stark. So, as you know, I love a stat bomb. So here's a couple for us to play with as we're talking along. So, according to Business in the Community's Responsible Business Tracker, while 86% of businesses have a purpose statement, so a statement, 83% have yet to consider what this means across the departments or in terms of setting clear team targets. HBR and EY, Ernst Young, 90% of executives say their company understands the importance of purpose. We all get it, but only 46% of them say it influences their strategy and operations. So what the hell does it mean? PwC, 79% of executives believe purpose is central to business success and the existence of an organization. So big stuff, they get it. But only 34% agree that it's a guide for executive decision making. And the last one I'll leave you with before we get back into having a conversation is 86% of executives state to have a corporate purpose, while only 24% say it's embedded across their business from culture, innovation, operations, and engagement in society. So it's no wonder that there is a cynicism around this.
I mean, that speaks volumes, doesn't it? Only 24% say it's actually embedded. That's, you would expect that to be higher.
Well, and also it brings us back to your second point, which is around the personal purpose, like, as you put it, like, why are we here? What's the point? The Monday morning thing, and so how does this all relate to that? And how do the two connect?
Yeah, so, and this is where it's interesting when we start to look beyond business, as it were, and start to look at generational cohorts and some of the trends and movements that we've seen come around over, it's certainly since COVID. So COVID was this global societal existential crisis that people started to genuinely and meaningfully question their lives. We found people that were suddenly being able to work from home, back to what we were talking about previously, spend time with family, not having to spend 4 hours commuting for the day. They started to have questions about why am I doing this job?
Definitely.
What's the reality? And if we kind of look at that alongside distribution of wealth crisis, and if we think about Maslow's hierarchy, I find this fascinating that the subsequent cohorts are flipping Maslow's hierarchy. They're heading straight for self-esteem, purpose, mastery, and autonomy.
Yeah.
Because actually we live in a society today where they can't, most organizations can't provide stability of wealth, a long-term job, the ability to be able to buy a house. The difference being, for example, that it now costs, in order to get a mortgage, your mortgage nowadays is 14%, is 14 times your annual salary, whereas 30 years ago it was 4 times that. So if you're not, if work's not,
just don't drop ones like that and just move on. That's phenomenal.
Yeah. So this is why we, as a society, we have this rental market that's going bananas. Yeah, because actually, if I'm coming into the workforce and I'm thinking of Gen Zs who are already well established within the workforce, Gen Alphas that will be joining us, and even for most millennials, having a job that's able to give them the ability to buy a home, which we were once told as being, a fundamental of being a successful grown-up, it's simply not there. So actually they're looking for where can I extract purpose from in my life if work isn't for it. And I was talking about Gen Z and Gen Alpha. One of the challenges for organizations is these generational cohorts are, I love a buzzword, are poly workers, they call it. So 45% of Gen Z have a side hustle. So they're not necessarily looking to join an organization thinking, all right, I'm going to work here for 20, 25 years, collect my carriage clock, and that'll give me a sense of who I am. Yeah. They're doing a job because actually it will fund the job they're really doing, which really provides them with their purpose, their creative outlet, etc. And it's easy to eye roll when we start talking about the kids, as it were. But, I've worked with leaders that are still trying to work out what to do about millennials. Millennials are hitting 40 now. They're in middle management and above. If you're only working out what to do with them now, then you've lost the battle. By 2027, I think, where's the stat here? We go. By 2025, Gen Z will represent 27% of the workforce. So,
wow.
So this is why it is important for us to be having these conversations, because this generation are highly politicized. They're highly they're highly purpose-driven. They don't equate career with purpose. They don't conflate the two in the way that perhaps former generations did. And it's not to say that you can't have a career with purpose, but they don't necessarily put those two together. And the last stat bomb I'm going to drop on this is 52% consumers choose brands whose values, personal values and purpose aligns with their own. Those consumers work somewhere, right? So they're going to do the same for the place that they're looking to work.
I do think that the generational differences are really, really starting to become apparent. Maybe for myself, because I am actually in the millennial era, and I think one of the most interesting things for me is when you're working with people who are slightly older, they haven't tended to change their careers much, but yet my generation seemed to be the start of one, where we deviate between our careers, and we want to try out different things, and it's no longer a thought in our mind, or we have to be in this job forever. And then you see Gen Z, and it's almost as if they don't want to be in any job. Sometimes that's how it feels, and to manage that and then work alongside people who have been in their careers their whole most of their life is actually really difficult. So I think a lot of people my age feel it's really tough, because you've got your own idea, and then you've got two generations either side of you that have completely different ways of working.
Well, we must be surely in 4 generations now. I would have thought.
Yeah,
We're thinking
alphas. Alphas
Right.
are coming very, very soon. And
well, I was actually thinking the one above me, actually. So you got so the ones before millennials. What are they lot called?
Gen X. That's me.
Right.
Gen X.
And then there's a group above that. But they're still knocking around, aren't they?
Yeah.
So you've got all of them coming together.
Yeah.
The office party, which we obviously talked about, doesn't happen now anyway. So, but you've got to get all these coming together. I mean, that's just mind blowing.
And you've hit on something really important there, which is the attitudes of what is work for. So if you think about the baby boomers, the post-war generation, who stability of wealth, ability to be able to provide was fundamental for them, because we come through this massive global instability. So the idea of finding a job for life was incredibly important. Finding a job that would give you a career for 20, 25 plus years was fundamentally important, right? And as that's progressed, the millennials, Gen Xers, which is me, sort of sit halfway between that, because we're also the ones that straddle the digital, the digital world divide. But also we've seen these huge cataclysms of within global economies. Yeah, and so the idea now that you can have a job for life or a career for life just simply doesn't exist. And I heard a fascinating fact. My son is just about to start university, and I was at a University Open Day the other day, and they were giving a talk, and they dropped a fact from the Global Economic Forum, which blew my mind. Which is, we know about squiggly careers or portfolio careers now. Many people have them now, and actually, it seemed to be. Well, it seems to be something that's admired by recruiters and organizations now, which is, you've got lots of experience across different sectors. How can that play into it? Whereas only 10 years ago, if you had lots of short-term things on your CV, they go,
yeah, you'd have to explain it, wouldn't you?
You'd have to explain it, yeah. Or there is a career break in there. They'd be going, well, what have you been doing with yourself? You look flighty.
Were you in prison?
Yeah. You don't look like you stay anywhere for very long. Whereas actually, it's the opposite now. If recruiters look at CV and it might have one job for 20, 25 years, and they go, what happened? Where's your ambition? And this is the number that really, this comes from Global World Economic Forum. It came from this university talk, that it says that Gen Alphas, so the ones that are just teetering on the edge, will have 7 careers in their work life. Not 7 jobs, 7 careers in their work life. That's to do with economic stability. It's to do with changing technology. But it's also to do with the fact that we are educating, and there are kids for jobs that don't even exist yet, or trying to.
Yeah.
And we don't know what the future of work is going to look like. So within all that, we have to answer the question of what is the purpose of work, and for organizations, like how are they going to create purpose? And the biggest challenge that I've seen because of all that is organizations having an organizational purpose and it feeling so far removed from the purpose of the people that work there. And I just give one very short example because I know I've been chatting for ages. That I spent a lot of time last year working with a manufacturing organization, and when we talk about purpose, I'm aware that it can feel like a very privileged thing. It can feel like a very middle class thing. It's a privilege to be able to work somewhere where you feel that there is a sense of where you have a sense of purpose. But actually, if you work in somewhere like, for example, Runcorn, where there's one major employer, actually your purpose may just be, I need to go to work and I need to put food on the table and provide for my family. And that's probably the most noble purpose, right? So clients and organizations have to find a way of meeting that gap in between, because having meaningless purpose statements, for example, if you're a curtain making company and saying, I bring light and dark into to the people of the world, doesn't mean anything.
Quick, write that down.
Yes, it doesn't mean anything. But actually, something meaningful like, we'll make the best products available, affordable for as many people as we can. That feels like something that, as an individual, who perhaps, comes from a different background, that might be something I might be able to get on board for.
So if we think about the fact that people need to, provide for their families, and that's really probably the most stable purpose that a lot of people have. People need jobs. So with looking at everything that we've spoken about with generations and organizational purpose, personal purpose, what impact does all of it have on the organization, and does it matter?
Yeah, 100%. As we mentioned, consumers make decisions on brands that they want to buy and want to be attached to based on their personal values and purpose. And another stat for bomb, Deloitte. They sound posh, don't they? Okay. Purpose
Very
influence.
posh.
Yeah. Purpose influenced 21% of respondents when it came to deciding a job. Yeah. 84% of people from the same study said it's important for an employer that provides meaningful work, has purpose. And 41% say they have left an organization due to a stated purpose not being lived or through lack of it. And I circle back to that point, is that the challenge and the conversation, because this is always about conversations or managing the dynamic tensions as we talk about in Rapid Evolution, which I know we've had other podcasts on, is around how do organizations create a genuinely meaningful purpose that looks to make the world a better place, that is genuinely lived and breathed and influences executive and strategic decisions alongside personal purpose. So you might not have a Gen Z person working for you forever and a day. You might be their side hustle, but there's still a way of aligning the two so that you can both be able to achieve your own goals.
That last stat actually really resonates with me. So 41% say that they've left an organization due to purpose. I have left organizations where they said, we'll give you more money if you stay. And I said, what you need to understand, it's not about the money for me. It's about the fact that I don't feel I'm getting what I need, either for my career or for my lifestyle, my purpose. And I think it's really important. And money, yes, money is important. Yes, we need to be able to provide for ourselves, but at the value of what? So, okay, great, I can afford this, I can afford that, but do I need all of this? Do I need all of that? No, I need a roof. Yes, I need to be able to afford food, but why would I stay in a company that doesn't make me happy just because they're providing me with more money?
And so it's obviously a changeable thing, isn't it? So that when we look at this, it's the challenge then, which is why we need to go to some sort of takeaways, is that the different people, and then if you go to an individual level, that also changes. What you want at one stage in life will be different at another stage, regardless of when you entered the workforce. So this is a big, tricky beast. So if you had to give us a few takeaways, what would they be?
Yeah. So, first one, it seems really common sense, but isn't always common practice. Have a purpose. Have a purpose and articulate it. What is your why as an organization? Beyond, making money, which, and profit. Profit isn't a bad word, but what is your purpose beyond that? Because actually, fundamentally, people are not motivated to get out of bed to buy shareholders a new yacht. Yeah. They want to feel like they're contributing to something bigger in their life. And so once you've articulated a really clear purpose, point number 2, make sure that purpose lives, right? Talk about it some more. And when you've talked about it, tell people what you talked about, yeah? And make sure that it drives decision-making, strategy. It's not just a soft, touchy-feely HR thing. It's not just a marketing exercise. It should drive every decision, strategy, process, system. Make it part of your KPIs and OKRs and rewards and recognition. So it really lives and people can really feel it. And then finally, and this is a difficult one for organizations, but there's so many ways for organizations to get caught out now, whether it be through Glassdoor or whether it's through media, is when you get it wrong, own it. Because part of purpose is transparency. And it's a phrase that makes people nervous: corporate vulnerability. Putting your hand up, standing up and going, look, this is what we did. We fell short. This is why it happened. This is why it's not going to happen again. That way, you're less likely to lose people who feel that your purpose is again part of purpose washing, because you're constantly looking to improve and involve people in that challenge.
I love that. That's really good. And then hopefully if people won't get that sort of sense of betrayal that you can get when you feel like they're sort of saying one thing but doing something else.
Exactly that.
Brilliant. Thank you. Yeah, love it. Thank you. That was great.
Yeah, what a great conversation. Thank you so much for really, asking those bigger questions of the way we work and talking about the reason and motivators that organisations can provide. So I've definitely learned a lot from this, and I hope our listeners have too. So thank you so much.
Yeah, it's a real pleasure. And I think just one thing to wrap up on that is that it's not just organizations that need to be talking about that. As leaders and individuals, leaders of teams, it's something that we should be talking about on a regular basis. What's the purpose of this project? How does it tie to our bigger project? And what's your purpose? Why are you here? What do you want to get from this tour of duty, as it were?
So thank you for listening to our podcast, New Ways, New Habits.
To find out future release dates, follow us on LinkedIn, and you can find all future podcasts on Spotify, SoundCloud and Apple. We really are the whole package.
And it wouldn't be right without saying, don't forget to provoke, plant and practice these new ways and new habits.